Hey there, and welcome to episode 4 of Paint with a Pint. I am your instructor, Janet Hockman, and today we are going to be painting Haystack Rock. Haystack Rock is one of Oregon's most recognizable landmarks. If you live in the Cannon Beach area near Haystack Rock, this is probably a place that you go to often. If you had the opportunity to just visit the Oregon coast, it was probably on one of your places to visit. This painting is particularly special to me because it is the very first painting that I ever created specifically for Paint with a Pint. It's also the painting that I taught in my very first live Paint with a Pint class, located at Fort George Brewery in Astoria, Oregon. After that small little class that I had, my Paint with a Pint little paint and sit business kind of took off, and so it holds a really special, meaningful memory for me. What I hope is that after today's video, you have the chance to paint Haystack Rock, hang it in your home, and it holds some sort of meaning for you as well. To begin the painting process, please make sure that you check out the description in this video for all of the materials you will need for this episode. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can get weekly videos from Paint with a Pint. The materials that you will need for today include a palette or a plate of paint with the following colors: white, black, blue, violet, red, orange, and yellow. You will also, of course, need a 16 by 20 pre-prepped standard canvas or whatever standard size of your choice. You will need 4 different size brushes, a 1 inch, a 3/4, a 1/2 inch, and a 1/4 inch brush, some paper towels, and a cup for rinsing out your brushes in between steps. I've also designed a stencil for today's episode. So just to make the process a little bit easier when sketching out the rocks, it's a good idea to just look up a picture of Haystack Rock and then sketch it out on a piece of paper with a pencil, cut it out. It makes the process of sketching them out so much easier, and it makes the painting process more enjoyable so that you have some time to practice before you actually put it on the canvas. So hang on to those once you have those made. It's also a good idea to have an apron or something to protect your clothes, because if acrylic paint, which is what we're using in these episodes, it gets on your clothes and it dries, it will stain. So please keep that also in mind. And going along with our Paint with a Pint theme, a pint of your favorite beverage. Please make sure that every time you take a sip of that beverage, whatever it might be, that you remind yourself that this process is meant to be enjoyable, fun, and relaxing. Try not to get so concerned with all the little details, but instead just enjoy the moment and enjoy the process of painting. With all of that said, cheers, and let's paint with a pint. To begin today's painting, I'm actually just going to start with my pencil. I'm going to place my hand at the bottom of my canvas, and I'm going to have all 5 fingers, my thumb being at the bottom. It might be the opposite if you're left-handed. And I'm going to just make a little mark at the very top of my hand on my canvas, and then I'm going to just draw a line that goes about straight across. It doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to be covering some of it up anyways. And then I'm going to take about a finger or 2 and place it right on that line. And right above my top finger, I'm going to place another line and draw another line that goes all the way across. Again, it does not need to be perfect because we'll be covering it up. What those 2 lines symbolize is this horizon line between the sky and the reflection. Now, I'm going to take my first stencil of Haystack Rock, and I'm going to place it on the right-hand side of my canvas, and I'm going to just place it right on that line that I just made, the top horizon line that I just made. And I'm going to just trace out Haystack Rock. onto my canvas. And then I'm also going to take my other little stencil, and on the left-hand side of my canvas, I'm going to place 2 fingers at the edge. Make sure that it's 2 fingers width in between the edge of your canvas and the second little stencil that you have. And I'm going to go ahead and trace that one out. So I've just laid out where the rocks will go and the horizon line. While I'm at it, I'm also going to take my first stencil again. I'm going to flip it upside down. And I'm going to trace out the mirror or reflection of the rock below. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other one as well. So I'm going to flip it upside down and trace. Okay, now I've completed a full sketch of where the rocks will go, the horizon, as well as their reflection or shadows in the water. I'm going to take care of painting the entire sky and the water or the reflection. And I'm going to be doing that with 2 coats. So just keep in mind that once we get that base coat on, then I'm going to be coming over it again to add just another layer and depth to the sky and to the reflection. If you happen to cover up some of this sketch with the paint, don't worry. We're going to be coming back and using the stencils once again in our painting. So once you trace this out the first time, make sure that you hang on to these because you're going to be needing them again. There's a little bit of repetition with the process of today's painting. So keep that in mind, and I just want to let you know about that because I think that the repetition and doing the multiple coats is what's going to get you the best result in the end. The first color that I'm going to mix up will be a dark kind of burgundy maroon red at the top of the sky, and I'm also going to be using that in the reflection down below. So using my 1 inch, my largest brush, I'm going to pull aside a little bit of red, and I'm going to dip just a little bit of black. Remember, black goes a long way. I'm going to mix that in to create a dark red or burgundy maroon sort of color. Once I have some of that on my brush, I'm going to, about the first 3 fingers, if you place 3 fingers, that's going to be your kind of your guide. Everything above that you want to paint this kind of dark red, and make sure that you also include the sides of your canvas, the top of your canvas, because in my opinion, when you're all done with your painting, everything's dry, and you maybe don't have a frame to place it in, you can still hang it on the wall, and having the sides painted is a nice touch. So I'm going to make sure that I paint also the top of my canvas and the sides as I work my way down. And I'm also going to paint just about maybe 1 to 2 fingers of this color down below. So I'm also going to want to paint the bottom of my canvas. So I'm going to give you some time to get just a little bit of this color throughout the top of your painting and all through the bottom, the very bottom, maybe just about 1 inch of this color. And then we'll start to blend in some of these warmer reds and orange values as well. So, gonna give you some time to work on that. We'll come back, we'll start to lighten up the color and continue on our base coat. Okay, now that we had a chance to add some of this dark red burgundy color to the top of our canvas, as well as the very bottom of our canvas, I'm going to just take a paper towel and wipe some of that off of my brush. I don't need to rinse it out just yet. Just take some of that excess paint off. And now I'm going to dip into just some red and let some of that brighter red kind of blend in with the darker values that we just added, because we're going to start to work in a little bit of orange. So I'm letting those two kind of blend together. And as you work your way down, you're going to need to make sure that you continue the same color on the sides that you're doing on the face of your canvas. So I have about 1 inch to 2 inches of this brighter red for my base coat. And now I'm going to blend a little bit of orange. So I'm taking a little bit of red and a little bit of orange and blending those two together to really get some warm colors throughout the sky. And we're doing sort of the mirror image or reflection. So now that I have some of that red above, I'm going to add some of that red, that brighter red below. So pretty much every color that I do in the sky, I want to do the same thing in the reflection. So instead of starting at the top of the canvas when I do the sky, I'm going to start at the bottom of the canvas when I do the reflection. So just mixing in a little bit of that red and that orange together. Remember, this is just the base coat. We are going to be coming back over this. Oops, I got a little bit of yellow. All right, now that I have a little bit of that red-orange, now I'm going to dip more into the orange than the red and really start playing around with those colors, blending and mixing together. The best way for these to blend together is when all the colors are still wet, because you can mix the colors together on your canvas and they blend together really nicely. If you wait too long for the paint to dry, it makes it very difficult to blend the colors. And the coats that this base coat or this first coat that I'm placing on my canvas is so thin that I can still see where I drew the line for the stencil, which is great. It will make it easier whenever I come back in again with my stencil when we start painting in the rock. Now I want to add some of that orange to the bottom in the reflection as well. I don't want to forget about the other side of my canvas. working my way down to my horizon line, I'm going to start to add in a little bit of yellow. So that lighter or that orange is going to get lighter because I'm blending a little bit of yellow into it. And if the red mixes in, that's fine too. And now I'm going to start to blend in some of that lighter orange throughout the center of the canvas. So orange, yellow, red, really all three of these mixed together nicely. So if you get a value that's a little bit darker or lighter, it's perfectly okay. And again, what I do on the top, I'm going to do in the bottom. Okay, now that I have the sky and the reflection painted, that's my first coat, that's my base coat. So I'm gonna let that completely dry. You might want to use a blow dryer to speed up the process. And I'm also going to rinse out my brush and dry it off. So rinse out your brush, dry it off while you let it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be using the same colors in a minute. So I'm going to dry that off and let it be so that in the meantime I can let my first base coat completely dry. So let this dry, and then when we come back, we're going to be doing our second top coat throughout the sky and the reflection. Alright, now that we have the base coat dry, I'm going to be going pretty much through the same process again. So I'm going to start at the top with this kind of darker red, burgundy, maroon. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that darker red. And I'm going to do a second coat over top. And this time I'm going to let some of this streakiness kind of come down into the brighter red because I'm trying to create movement in the sky, a little bit of texture, a little bit of that streaky effect. So in the second coat, instead of everything being really blended and really solid, I'm going to just kind of have fun with these side to side brush strokes. So just kind of moving back and forth throughout my canvas and going back over that base coat. So we're making it, we're kind of polishing things off. Now I'm going to move into some of that brighter red, maybe even mixed in with a little bit of orange. And again, just side to side, light brush strokes. Oops. Have some fun with this, take your time. There's no really right or wrong way to where you place color, as long as it's gradually from the top of the canvas, gradually going from dark to light all the way to the horizon, and then doing the same thing from the horizon down to the bottom of the canvas. So kind of moving back and forth between the top of the canvas and the bottom of the canvas. I want that sort of mirror reflection. This is really the most time-consuming part of your painting, because you are blending colors together. You're doing it in this side-to-side motion, and it's really the final top coat in the sky and the reflection in the water. So I'm going to give you some time to play around with this and really enjoy the process. Drink your pint. Have some fun with it, enjoy the moment, enjoy the process as you're making it. A couple of tips with colors. I have a little bit of this kind of like light pink, so I might blend in a little bit of white into this color as I'm moving my way down, and I'm going to add a little bit of white in the yellow to make this really kind of light at the horizon and below that. So have some fun. I'm going to give you some time to just get that top coat on your canvas, and then when we come back, we will start to work on the rocks. Now that we have the base coat and the top coat with a little bit of texture throughout the sky and in the reflection in the water, I don't need my 1-inch brush right now, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse that out in my jar. And I want to make sure that this top coat is completely dry before we move on to painting the rocks and their reflection. So I'm going to give you a moment to make sure that this is totally dry before we move on to our next step. Now that we have the base coat, top coat completely dry, I'm going to grab my stencil once again, as well as my pencil, and I'm going to just match up where I drew my lines out for Haystack Rock at the beginning, and I'm going to make that line once again. So again, this is why you need this to be very dry, because you're going to be using your stencil to create another outline so that you can see where it is you need to fill in Haystack Rock for its silhouette. So now I can really clearly see that line, and I'm also going to flip that over and just go over my original line for the reflection again as well. So it's going to make it a lot easier to see where I need to fill in the color for the silhouette and the reflection. I don't need the large stencil anymore. I'm going to set it aside and grab my small stencil and outline once again where the small rock needs to go. And then flip it over. So now I have the stencil and basically my drawing that I originally started with set out on my canvas all over again, which is great because the sky is done and now we're just going to focus on the silhouette of Haystack Rock and its reflection. So to do that, I'm going to grab my 3/4 brush. If your palette is super messy like mine, you probably want to grab a second plate to mix out your colors. And I'm going to be mixing a really dark red, so like burgundy, really deep burgundy, using more black than any other color. I'm just going to blend in a little bit of red to that. So I'm not using black, even though in the picture or in my reference painting it may look like the silhouette of Haystack Rock is painted in black. It's not when you look really close. It's actually a very dark red. So once I have that mixed up on my brush, I'm going to take that and just start to fill in ever so carefully where I drew my stencil onto the canvas. So I'm going to start along the edges of the Haystack Rock, and then I'm going to fill everything else in once I have that outline planned out. And once I have the outline up above planned out, I'm then going to do the same thing down, same color, down in the reflection. So outline where that reflection will go. And this section in between the Haystack Rock and its reflection or shadow is going to be a slightly different color. So I'm just outlining that so I know where that color will go. And now I'm going to outline with the same color I mixed up, that very dark red. I'm going to outline the little rock over on the left-hand side of my canvas. I'm going to let that shadow go all the way to the bottom of my canvas. Okay, now I want to use that. I need to mix up a little bit more on my plate, so I need some more black, some more red. Some more black and some more red. And now I'm going to make sure that the inside of the silhouette of Haystack Rock is completely filled in using that color. So I'm going to give you some time to go ahead and get that all filled in. Now that we have both the silhouette of Haystack Rock and the shadow in the reflection of the water, I want to paint this horizon line here where the sky is divided by the horizon line and the reflection below. And to do that, I want a little bit of black, and I'm also going to use a little bit of blue. So a really, really dark blue, almost a little bit of violet as well. So that's why I have the violet on my original palette. So I'm going to take a little bit of violet, a little bit of blue, and mix it onto my palette with some black. And to warm that up, I can add a little bit of red for a very unique mixed up color. And in the space that's left on your canvas that is completely white, that is where I want that color to go. So I'm going to go ahead and continue it over here. Okay, so the silhouette is complete as well as the horizon line. I want this to completely dry. In the meantime, I'm going to rinse out my 3/4 brush because I don't need it anymore. And the last step that we're going to do in just a moment, once we have time for this to dry, is we're going to add just a wee little bit of texture to the shadow of Haystack Rock in the water. We want the rock above the water, so the actual silhouette of Haystack Rock, we want that to be really crisp, a very crisp, clean line all the way around. However, down in the water, we want to show some texture. So in a moment, once we have time for that to dry, I'm going to come back and touch that up, and then our painting of Haystack Rock will be complete. Our final step of painting Haystack Rock is just to add a little bit of texture to the shadow down in the water. So I'm going to go back to my original plate, and I'm just going to pick out some of these lighter values of orange and yellow and maybe even a little bit of pink. And I'm going to just kind of lightly go over the edges just to give it that texture of water along the edges of the reflection. So very light brush strokes. It's also adding a little bit of detail to the water that I created earlier. You really don't need a whole lot, and again, it's just a little extra detail to kind of polish off your painting, make it look slightly more realistic. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time to just kind of play around with those edges down in the water. And then when we're done, you just have to let it dry and it's complete. Now that you have the finishing touches to your Haystack Rock painting, that is the end of episode 4, Paint with a Pint. I greatly appreciate you spending this time with me today. I hope that you had fun and enjoyed yourself while doing this painting with me. If you liked anything about this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I greatly look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Paint with a Pint.